Kia ora, tēnā rā, tātou katoa e whakarongo mai ana, e mātakitaki mai nai tēnei o ngā kāturanga. I te hihia kia puarepuia tēnei wahanga ki tētahi whakatauki ki tētahi kōrero rainei. Engari, ka waiho mā tēnei huanga no wāku, ara mā haukapua no tēnā e whakapuare. So I want everybody to have a grand welcome to this amazing gentleman. He needs no introduction, he can introduce himself. Tēnā koe, nau mai ki tēnei hōtaka e hoa kamutu. Tēnā kororo mai koe, ahu mai hia o karangatanga maha. Ana māku tonu o ngā pātai, e tākina, paumuri atu ana i tēnā.
Tēnā koe te whae o tira, tēnā no tātou e whakarongo mai nei. Ko Haukapuanui Vercoe tōku ingoa, he uri whakaheke ahau no te Arawa, no tūwhare toa, no Ngaitahu, no Ngāti Raukawa, no te motu whānui, hoi anō e tupu mai i rotorua nei. Ai, haere ki te kura kaupapa Māori o te koutu, me te kohanga reo ki ohau, i okere, i tēnei wā kei Tāmaki Makaurau ahau e ako ana i te whare wānanga, e whai ana i te tahi tohu kairangi i te ao pūkaha. Tēnā tātou.
He whakāturanga tēnei e whakatairanga ana i ngā momo taira o te Arawa. Ka mutu, he hake pia wetahi kōrero, wetahi akoranga, wetahi mātauranga no hoki, hei whanga i wā tātou uri, ka mutu i te motu whānui, te ao whānui, kia rarata mai rātou, ki wenei momo tikanga, ka tākina ki tēnei momo kaupapa. So, first and foremost, welcome. Tēnā koe haukapua. I want to begin our podcast with a whakaaro around what can you tell us the work that you're doing currently and what has driven you and what or even who are those has kind of influenced you in your life to kind of push you to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm studying at the University of Auckland, pursuing a PhD in civil engineering. My kaupapa overall looks into the resilience of marae in natural hazard events. So a natural hazard event is an event such as an earthquake, flooding, tsunami, all of those kind of disasters, and how climate change is going to exacerbate those effects in terms of the intensity or frequency of those events. So what we've been seeing lately is unfortunately the
impact
is what underpins my research. The stuff we've been seeing lately with our marae down in Ngāti Kahungunu up north on the east coast. That's pretty much what my kaupapa looking at.
Civil engineering though, like, what a career to pursue, one, and then apply the learnings that you've had here in your home of Rotorua and Te Arawa. How did you even move from, come from Te Kohanga Reo or Oho, and then jumping into this whole world that you've put yourself in now?
Yeah. So growing up, I've always enjoyed numbers, so mathematics, all throughout primary, unlike heaps of my mates, they don't really like maths. And then when I got to high school, I discovered physics. And so engineering is defined as problem solving. And so when you combine physics and mathematics or calculus, that's basically what engineering is. And so I just used that passion and somehow made it into engineering school, finished our degrees, and then just moving on to a little bit of further study at the moment. Yeah.
You recently graduated at the University of Auckland, and there's some kōrero around you and your brother, both in the careers that you've chosen, but the field of study that you guys have chosen. Obviously, you're talking a little bit about climate change, the effects of the environment that are happening to the environment as we see it. Why did you choose to pursue that sort of work now? I know you said that you love numbers and all those sorts of things, but there must have been somewhere in your life where you thought, oh, I can see ruaimoko. No, I can see ruaimoko. I can see Papatuanuku kind of moving in tāwhiri and all those elements of our atua, and then combining it into the view that you have on the world.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what really captured my attention in terms of the civil engineering degree is the full name is Civil and Environmental. I think it was that second part that might have captured me a little bit more. Just growing up at Kura and at the marae, we know that we've got a close connection to our taiao, our environment. You might think that the waters might be a tangible representation of our people. So if the waters are well, then the people are well, and conversely. And so, yeah, from there, I basically just chose that as a career path, and all the learnings that I've been learning, I've been looking at how our taha Māori connects into what we learn at university. I think there's still a long way to go for institutions to start including our stuff into the curriculum, but it's definitely in the pipeline at the moment, and some lecturers are also putting it into practice, so that's definitely promising to see.
So I know you're like in the research part of your thing, but what does your day-to-day entail in terms of the mahi that you're doing?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm just coming up to confirmation, which is basically 1 year from your start date to see if you get in or not. So I've just been trying to hit all of my milestones for that. But in terms of day-to-day stuff, just get up early, have breakfast, start the day at around 9 o'clock, study for a few hours, have lunch, study again, and then, I don't know, gets to 4 o'clock. Yeah, reading journal articles, academic stuff, forming a literature review.
How does that influence the way that you think and the way that you view the world?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because you get to see what work is being done locally in Aotearoa, but also what other people are doing all over the world. So, for example, when I was researching marae, I guess our equivalent of a marae overseas would be something like the pyramids in Egypt, or, you know, other transnational heritage sites. So I was kind of looking at how climate change has affected those kind of sites and what sort of adaptations they're making, and whether we could apply some of those here in Aotearoa for our marae. So if we look at our coastal communities or marae, they will now have to consider managed retreat and maybe moving their marae, because the climate change projections show that, I don't know, in 10, 20 years, their marae might be underwater, or their urupa might be eroded out to sea.
How does that make you feel?
Yeah, pretty sad, but I think it's better to take action instead of just letting, I guess, tangaroa take the marae, or, you know.
Do you think that, because for those who haven't, who aren't aware, Haukapua is a graduate of Te Kura Kaupapa Māori, or Te Koutu, here in Rotorua, and all those learnings within that education system. How did your understanding of the world when you were in Kura and at home here in Rotorua, how has that also helped influence the way that you look into the way that you study as well?
Yeah, so definitely having the whānau environment at home, at school, that definitely forms, I guess, my identity. But in terms of the line of thinking, same again, the synergies between us and the taiao. You always think holistically, you don't think, in single columns. Everything is across the board. We don't just look at one aspect, because we know that if this is affected, then that affects something else. Similar to, I guess, the concept of mauri. You know, if the mauri of the water is down, then the mauri of the people's down, the mauri of the taiao is down, and conversely as well.
For those that are kind of hearing this for the first time, what would your, for those who are wanting to kind of come back into their old Māori, or wanting to reconnect and connect to something within the Māori world, what would you say to them, and how would you, what advice would you give to them to be able to reconnect back? How would you do that?
I guess just talking to your whānau, your kaumatua, if you know the connections. Otherwise, just going back to your marae, there's bound to be someone around that vicinity that knows something about the marae, or if you've got a whānau name, someone will pick up on that whānau name and will most likely know someone. But I think it's something that we all welcome. We all welcome whānau who weren't fortunate enough to know that stuff to come back to their own whānau and reconnect. Yeah,
because it can be a difficult journey for many, but it's also for someone as yourself. You're living in Tāmaki now. You are figuring ways of always maintaining your connection back home here in Te Arawa. How's that go?
Yeah, pretty good. We come home quite often. Really missing home. But I guess some of the landmarks in Tāmaki, such as, Ōkahu Bay, we know that as Ōkahu Mato Momoi, or, Motuihe, Te Motua Ihinga, the island of Ihinga, or Rangitoto Island. I guess that kind of helps reconnect me to that wāhi, even though that's not our rohe. I guess the names kind of help me feel more connected.
Well, it isn't now, but we all know that the occupation of Te Arawa and Tāmaki Makaurau, along with Tainui Waka, are the first occupants, and then those landmarks that you've just mentioned, along with many others like Te Turi o Tamate Kapua, Waiheke Tua, Te Rua Potaka, are all Te Arawa landmarks and have been named by our tupuna along the way. So when we're considering the boundary, and this is just for you to always remember and understand that Pangaparawa is the point, and then it goes through to Point Shevish, all the way down to Takanini, and then all the way to Moihau, and all the way back to Makitu and Rotorua. Ko kora tonu tō kāinga, hakua te aha. Hakua ko ngā mana whenua o Nāia nei, he mana whenua no Ngāti Whātua, no ngā iwi o Ngāti Pāo me wera atu. He hononga o rātou ki te waka o Te Arawa. And this is for all of us to remember that you can always find or establish a place in the world if you're not living at home. And that's kind of the learnings and the kōrero we're wanting to encourage for our whānau who are wanting to connect back, but also trying to put a pou wherever they are living in the world to know that, there is a place for you in the world if you're not brought up or privileged to have been brought up on the whenua that some of your tupuna are. So my next question for you is around the mahi that you do, the learnings that you've gained. What is one of the tupuna stories or kaupapa kōrero that you find dear to your heart, and why?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is Te Amo Te Te Ra Te Auahi, and how it talks about, the eruption of Tarawera, but perhaps as a response to how we've been treating the land. Maybe that was one of the reasons. And I look at how that's relevant today, the way that we're treating our taiao and even the world. These kind of disaster events are coming back and teaching us a lesson, I think, to remember that, Mother Nature's always wins. In the line of work that you're doing, and the research that you're doing, obviously your marae, I think there's like 52 marae here, 52 plus marae here in Rotorua. Have you figured or have you thought of a master super plan to help those marae cope when it comes to like disasters and civil emergencies, I think they call them? Yeah. Oh, not quite yet. That probably might be one of the main outcomes of my way out there my thesis, but definitely wanting to include as many of our Te Arawa marae as possible, because we're at the centre of all the different hazards here. We've got geothermal, we've got earthquakes, we've got flooding, we've got landslides, you name it, we've got it here. And so it would be, I guess, silly not to assess some of our marae here in Te Arawa.
I think some people are also talking about we're having housing intensification happening in all over Aotearoa, but in particular Rotorua, and obviously the infrastructure. Well, probably I'm going to go right there. Three Waters, mate.
Yep.
I'm sure you're clued up in that. And I want your whakaaro around the importance of knowing the Three Waters plan, or why it's important to be focused on that sort of a kaupapa.
Yeah, so I guess that's the other, offshoot of my thesis, other legislative changes or reforms, such as Three Waters. We want to know what implications that's going to have on our marae. Will it be helpful, or will it put more pressure on the marae just to become compliant? Because, if the standards rise and if our whānau, don't have the resources, will that put more pressure on them?
Yeah, not equipped.
As a marae, yeah. Or even things like insurance. What are the implications of marae insurance?
It's a huge kōrero at the moment around marae and insurance. I think I saw a marae in Waikato who have just put a blanket 40 people just to meet the insurance requirements of that house. So for here, and for those who don't know, marae are fully under pressure when it comes to the stability of the structure and then the infrastructure. So what are your whakaaro around it, and did you have an immediate solution or even a long-term solution to that? I know these are big questions. I'm so sorry. I'm putting the pressure of Māori Dim and marae systems on you, but I know that you're capable enough to at least come up with a kōrero.
Yeah. Well, I think that past natural hazard events have shown that Māori in particular excel when it comes to responding. So if we use the likes of the 2011 Christchurch earthquake and the 2016 Kaikoura earthquake, the first people that were to respond were the whānau down there saying, come to the marae, we'll look after you. And I think from memory, at the Kaikoura earthquake, they served 10,000 meals in 1 week to anyone who needed, a kai or a place to sleep. So that just goes to show that we've definitely got the goods, and I guess that supports the argument that if our marae are under-resourced, whether it's infrastructure or buildings or whatever, then we should be resourced adequately so that when these kind of events do crop up, we can respond, more equipped instead of just performing with less resources.
That probably brings me to the word under-resourced. Valuing the marae system, that's probably what I call it, and valuing, because it's not just the whare and it's not just the papakainga, there's mātauranga, there's whakapapa, tikanga, kawa, and every puna mātauranga you could think of is all associated in that one base. It's a place, a centre of knowledge for most. And for you, how has that encouraged you? Oh, we're hearing it all throughout this conversation, but I guess I want you to explain to me a bit further how the marae has helped you in your life.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, actually, like I guess you could liken it to recharging your batteries. When you've been away from home too long, that's always a solution. Just go back to your marae, go be on your whenua, go to the urupa, go and see your whānau. That's the immediate thought that comes to mind. The second one is probably just a reminder to, always humble yourself. Despite what you might do out in the big wide world, you're never better than anyone else. You're always just going to be a dishwasher at the marae, or, clean the toilets or whatever. So you're never better than anyone else. So it's just a reminder to be humble, I think.
Obviously, this podcast is around celebrating and valuing Te Arawa success across the board as we celebrate the 100 years of the establishment of the first Te Arawa Māori Trust Board. And on that trust board is one of, I think it might be two of your karaua, but one of the main karaua that we talk about is Morehu Te Kiriko. If you could you explain to us how that's his influence has shaped your whānau and you as an individual?
Yeah, I guess it just means that we just need to continue that legacy. I mean, it's something they started, and we have the responsibility to continue that. So we just need to be great like they were.
I know you're in your 20s, and your line of sight and your vision for the future looks very, very bright. What are your aspirations? One for yourself, and then one for your iwi of Te Arawa.
Yeah, so to me they go hand in hand. So reciprocity has always been something I've been big on. Just giving back in, big or small ways, whether that's just inspiring rangatahi or encouraging rangatahi to get into tertiary study and showing them, what opportunities are actually available when you go to those kind of places, but more so the networks too, because it's the people you meet. It's not really what happens in the classroom. You're not going to remember what happened in your tests in first year or whatever, but it's the people that you meet, and just keeping those circles. And yeah, the second thing is just being a servant back to the iwi. So that's the whole pūtake of pursuing this qualification, really, is to, when we get into those higher spaces, we can actually talk confidently about issues that we know about.
One of the other kaupapa we're talking about is obviously sense of identity. How do you maintain that? What are your what are the things within inside of you that push you to want to be Te Arawa?
Yeah, so something I always do when I guess that's feeling down is I always just listen to kapako, wāta kraua. That's always my go-tos, really. Other than that, just calling up Nan Koro, just the whānau. That always helps to rekindle the flame. But I guess we all get that feeling when we need to do that, and just about taking action. Yeah.
And then where do you see yourself when you finally finish your PhD?
Who knows, probably back here. But I'm pretty keen to go overseas and see what that has over there, and then bringing all of that mātauranga back, and just reciprocating, really. I'm
like, you're 25 and then you'll be 27 when you finish your PhD. Like, what else is there to learn? Do you think that there's more?
Oh yeah, there's always more to learn. I guess our little bit of research just contributes a tiny bit to the overall knowledge of the world, but we hope that can make a difference somewhere.
Hei kōrero whakamutunga pēr ki tēnei wahanga kia tāua. He kōrero, he aki rānei wā ki o tamariki mokopuna te hara mai nei?
Kia nei me whai te tukaurangi ki te tuahu koe me he maunga teitei, so always, shoot for the stars, and if you miss, hopefully you'll land on a nice soft cloud.
Tēnā pai tēnā. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā tātou.